Okay. We on the chat on Zoom. Hello, and welcome to the launch of the International Energy Agency's new report, A Vision for Clean Cooking Access for All, that we produced in partnership with the African Development Bank Group. I'm Jethro Mullen, head of the IEA's communications team, and I'm joined today by IEA Executive Director Dr. Fatih Birol and IEA Director of Sustainability, Technology and Outlooks, Laura Kotzi, and by the report's lead author, Daniel Wetzel. We're also very pleased to have with us the African Development Bank Group's Vice President for Energy, Climate and Green Growth, Dr. Kevin Kariuki, as well as senior representatives from the World Health Organization, Senegal and Kenya. So during today's press webinar, Dr. Birol will make some opening remarks, and then followed by some remarks from Dr. Kariuki. Ms. Kotzi will then present the key findings of the report, which is freely available on our website, I would note. And after the presentation, we will hear some brief remarks from the WHO and from the government of Senegal and Kenya. And after that, we'll have time for some questions from journalists. For the journalists taking part in this press webinar, we invite you to submit your questions via the Q&A function in the Zoom. You can do this at any point during the presentation, and we'll also take a 2-minute break right after the presentation for you to submit your questions. And with that, I'll hand over to the IEA Executive Director, Dr. Birol.
Thank you very much, Jethro. Dear colleagues, dear friends, greetings from International Energy Agency headquarters in Paris. As many of you know, International Energy Agency focuses on energy security, focuses on climate change, and we do a lot of work on these issues with all the governments around the world and the energy industry. But there is another area that IEA has been working very, very hard, which is energy poverty. Since almost 2 decades, maybe more than 2 decades, we look at the issues of electricity access and also clean cooking. We were the first ones who came up with the numbers, how many people in the world have no access to electricity, country by country, and also looking at the clean cooking issue. I see that the electricity access issue is getting more and more attention. We have not solved the problem yet, definitely not yet in sub-Saharan Africa. But when it comes to clean cooking, I believe the attention, the public attention, is not as big as we would like to see at the International Energy Agency. Therefore, we have decided to come up with a vision how we can provide clean cooking access for everybody. And IEA takes a consistent and genuine interest in energy poverty, and it is one of the contributions of the IEA to this domain. In this report, I would like to thank my colleague, President Adesina from African Development Bank for supporting this report. Dear colleagues, today, according to our numbers, 2.3 billion people, which means 1/3 of the world population, they cook their meals by using wood, agricultural waste, dung, and others in order to prepare their meals. In our view, this practice, which is common in many parts of the developing world, but especially in sub-Saharan Africa, needs to be only in the history books. While a big part of the world deals with the issues like the artificial intelligence, the IT issues, and with our smart phones, it is really very disturbing, at least we find in the IEA, that the 1/3 of the people in the world are using these practices. We see that some countries already made good efforts in China, India, Indonesia, and as such, the biggest part of the problem is today sub-Saharan Africa. Hence, this report is focusing on mainly on sub-Saharan Africa. So, what are the issues related with using wood, agricultural waste, animal waste for cooking? What are the implications? Number one, the health implication. It is a major reason for premature death in many countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, and women and children are the direct target of this air pollution and respiratory diseases. So this is a major issue, and it is a disturbing issue for us that we just sit back and watch the situation as the world, as this issue emerges as a major threat for health for millions of people, especially for women and children. The second issue is we talk more and more in different parts of the world on the gender issue, which we should even talk more. But when I look at the numbers, I see that it is mainly women who do suffer under this. Not only in terms of health, but they are losing a lot of their time to collect wood and also for cooking. Our analysis show that on average a woman spent about 5 hours a day just to collect the fuel for cooking and then to cook it. And this is definitely bad for the woman not to have enough time for education, for social life, and others. So women are disadvantaged, and in my view, my personal view, if we talk about the gender issues in the world, this should be as a top priority. And the third negative implications, environmental implications, the loss of trees and firewood, using it for firewood has significant implications on environment. And my colleague, our director, Laura Cosi, will tell you more about that. And in our report, since we are providing a vision for the governments around the world, we came up with suggestions for rural and suggestions for urban areas, how we can fix this problem. The nature of the solution changes between urban and rural, while we see in urban areas the easier solutions include LPG and electricity. For the rural area, we may see bioethanol, biogas, solar cookers, and improved cook stoves can be part of the solution. Now, how much does it cost to fix this problem? In my view, it is an economic problem, gender problem, and a humanitarian problem. It costs only annually $8 billion US dollars. So I am very happy to see that the more and more oil producers and oil companies sees this issue as a part of the global energy challenges. So my appeal to those producers and companies who made last year $4 trillion of revenues, this to allocate $8 billion on an issue which they always repeat at international fora and elsewhere. It is only 0.2% of the revenues they made last year. But of course, in addition to that, we have to find structural responses to the problem, which ranges from governments, where we have the problem, come up with the right policies to address this issue, to the international and regional development institutes, banks and the financial institutions to provide concessional funding for this helping to address this issue. So, dear colleagues, to finish, two things. One, I would like to thank my colleagues who made a very hard work here and to make this report, put it together. My colleague, Mrs. Laura Cozy, our director, and again my colleague Dan Wetzel, who is the lead author of this report, and their team, sincerely for preparing this report. And also finishing by saying, Jethro, that we have the money which we need is minimal, and the benefits of solving this problem will be huge for these people and for the world. And we have all the solutions. What we need is the genuine willingness to address this problem. Thank you, and turning to you, Jethro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol, for those opening remarks. We'll now hear from Dr. Kevin Kariuki, the African Development Bank's Vice President for Energy, Climate Change and Green Growth, assuming the internet connection between here and Côte d'Ivoire is working okay. So, Dr. Kariuki, can you hear us?
Yes.
Please go ahead. Thank you very much, Dr. Kariuki, for those remarks. And now the IEA's Director of Sustainability, Technology and Outlooks, Ms. Laura Cozzi, will present the key findings of the report. Laura, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jethro. It's a pleasure to join Dr. Birol and Dr. Kariuki here today to give you the key insights of the report. And as Jethro mentioned, this is freely available online for all of you to look at. Let me start with the picture, because as we say, a picture tells more than 1,000 words. I just want to understand everyone. What is clean cooking? What is the problem of clean cooking? So today, 1 woman in 3 in the world is still cooking in this way. This means it's using very primitive fuels, and these the implications of that, since these fuels and stoves are very, very primitive, they're very inefficient. So we are able to convert only a small portion of these fuels in actual heat. And as Dr. Birol mentioned, the result of these inefficiencies, is that there is a lot of smoke, as you can see here. This smoke is breathed for many hours, as the process of cooking is very long, by these women, many cases in indoor places, causing respiratory diseases that today our colleagues from WHO tell us is actually in Africa the 2nd cause of death, and in the world the 3rd cause of death. So first of all, an energy problem that is very much a health problem, an energy problem that is also a gender issue. These women, as mentioned earlier, spend 5 hours either attending the fire or going out and taking the woods. We know actually for many, many decades the ways to resolve this problem. Dr. Birol mentioned that we actually at the IEA started tracking this, the issue 24 years ago, country by country, collecting the data and monitoring this year over year. And we are now very proud to be part of the UN coalition of what we call custodians that actually bring to the world every year this data. And I want to start with the good news. We were very happy in the year 2010 to say that the number of people without access to clean cooking peaked. Why did it peak? You can see it here. Actually, developing Asia started a big progress. Why did we see this progress? 3 ingredients. First, national leaders put clean cooking as a big priority. So we have seen this consistently in China, in India, and Indonesia. All those countries over the past decade achieved incredible success. The second, used a proven technology solution. In many cases, we see that LPG provided the big push. The numbers are quite staggering if you look at them. 1 billion people got access over the past decade, 70% of them through clean cooking solutions. Third, in all the successful policies, women were part of the discussion at local level, at community level, to have sustained success. Now, if we go forward, we see this continued success and progress witnessed in developing Asia, but unfortunately, we do not still see yet progress in sub-Saharan Africa. That's why we work with the African Development Bank to bring this problem to the heart and center of the discussion for Africa in particular. The numbers are heartening in the sense that the number of people without access to clean cooking in Africa has never stopped to grow, and we are not seeing this trend changing anytime soon. Even if you look far ahead in the future, in 2050, most countries in sub-Saharan Africa, with the policies and the funding that we see today, would still have a clean cooking access problem. That's why, as Dr. Kariuki mentioned and Dr. Birol mentioned, we work together to put forward a vision. How can we solve this problem? So how did we do it in the past? The past, we pushed ahead mostly through LPG. It was successful. Going forward, we did this very granular analysis, going into the detail of what are the solutions at very granular level. The solutions are not the same in every part of the world. Where you can see here, you have a basket of solutions. There is not a technical problem here. We know how to do all of this. We know how to do LPG stoves. We know how to connect electricity or induction stoves. We know how to do biogas. We know how to do ethanol. We even know how to do solar cookers today. So We know that the combination of those technologies, most of it again LPG, but depending on the local solution, others would need to be deployed. At what scale? The scale is very similar to what actually the world has done at the best over the past decade. So we need to repeat the same success we did over the past decade to do it this decade. And we would finally get to a picture where by 2030, everyone gets what we call clean cooking access. What are the implications of those? Dr. Birol mentioned that you save a lot of premature deaths. I'm sure that my friend Maria Neira will say this. In many cases, energy ministers don't understand that in certain countries, actually they are the health minister. You would cut premature deaths by 2/3. Numbers are staggering. The numbers are equally staggering when you see the opportunities that you would bring to these women, the hours that they would not use to collect and attend the fires are enormous. Just to give a sense of how enormous they are, you bring them all together. This is equivalent of the hours that the entire workforce of a G7 country like Japan has on an annual basis. This gives you a sense of the opportunities that lie ahead for these women, but also for the economic growth of the countries, in particular of the Sub-Saharan Africa continent. Dr. Birol mentioned earlier that in many cases over the past decade, and when we hear discussions about bringing clean cooking solutions, sometimes the funding and being sure that this is done in a sustainable manner prevent some of the funding to come through. Our analysis is very clear. Bringing clean cooking access for all does not increase emissions. It cuts them. Why is that? You will have some increase from burning LPG. You will have some increase if you're using an electricity cooker that is linked to a non-renewable power plant. Of course, you will emit something. And this is the number that you see there. You would have an increase of around 200 million tons. However, what you do are cutting two major other sources of emissions that are much, much larger. The first is actually, remember the first picture I showed you? There is a lot of incomplete combustion happening. This is technical. You emit methane, and methane is a more potent gas than CO2. So you're actually slashing more emissions than actually putting them in the atmosphere. And finally, this collection of woods create in many areas, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, deforestation that is one of the largest causes, together with energy combustion, of greenhouse gas emissions. So all in all, there is no choice between providing clean cooking and no contradiction between providing clean cooking and cutting emissions. Our results are very clear. Providing clean cooking for all by 2030 will slash emission by 1.5 gigatons. I leave you with this last slide. It shows the world invested around 2.5 billion over the past decade on average to provide clean cooking for all. We need to reach 8 billion. To give you a sense of scale, last year the world went into a global energy crisis. Many governments started subsidizing and helping their citizens, rightly so. The amount of money we spent last year is 100 times larger than what we would need on a yearly basis to solve the problem. So there is no technical barrier, there is not financial barriers, is really, as said earlier, a political willingness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for the presentation. So a little bit earlier, Dr. Kevin Kariuki of the African Development Bank made some excellent remarks that we heard very well here in the studio, but unfortunately our audiences on the live stream were unable to hear him and the journalists in the webinar. So we're going to go back to Dr. Kariuki so everyone can hear those remarks again. Dr. Kariuki, over to you, and apologies for the technical gremlins.
Not a problem. Again, I'm truly delighted to represent my bank president, Dr. Akiwumi Adesina, at today's launch of this pioneering report, which is a vision for clean cooking access for all. I believe the launch spotlights very clearly the risks of lack of clean cooking access and kickstarts a concerted effort to establish a definitive pathway to universal access to clean cooking solutions and technology. The report is a collaborative effort between the IEA and the African Development Bank, and is underpinned by the importance and indeed the urgency that our two institutions attach to attaining universal access to clean cooking on the continent. We are calling on global action to support accelerated access to clean cooking solutions and technologies, and hope that the proposed pathways will galvanize such actions amidst increasing socio-economic development in Africa and the growing private sector interest in clean cooking. In this regard, we heard Dr. Birol say that 8 billion in annual investments is required globally. This amount is $4 billion in Africa for universal access to be attained by 2030. And this is a significant amount, but not insurmountable considering the potential benefits. But just to contextualize, Dr. Birol talked about the oil companies. Here, the amount required is only a small proportion, actually less than a tenth, of the 2030 annual net profit reported by any of the 10 largest companies in the world. In closing, I thank Dr. Birol and indeed the entire IEA team for delivering this insightful report within a record of 5 weeks, and sincerely hope that the global community will rise to the occasion and make universal access to clean cooking and technologies in Africa a reality by 2030. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kariuki, especially for your patience with the slight technical issue we had. So we now get to hear from some key stakeholders who are deeply involved in this issue, assuming the technical problems don't come back for us. So we'd like to start with the World Health Organization and Dr. Maria Neira, the Director of Public Health, Environmental and Social Determinants of Health at the WHO. So Dr. Neira, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Well, and we can see you. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this very important launch. Let me put some perspective. A few decades ago, the global health community was very strongly advocating for access to clean water and sanitation as one of the key determinants of our health. I think we proved that it was absolutely necessary, and there is no health if we don't have access to clean water and sanitation. Well, today, the global health community, the WHO, and all the large community working on health, we need to advocate for access to clean sources of energy. Why is that? Because if we don't have clean sources of energy, if we keep relying on combusting fossil fuels, we are literally dying. We have every year 7 million premature deaths caused by exposure to air pollution. So access to energy is fundamental for our health. We tend to focus on urban air pollution, on the sources of energy that we need for transport, for generating our electricity, and the sources of energy for other uses. And we tend to forget, and Dr. Birol was very clear on that, we tend to forget that in addition to that, we need energy at the household level as well. We need energy for something as basic as cooking or maintaining a minimum of heating or lighting in our house. And unfortunately, today, a big proportion of the population is still cooking like in the Stone Age. I'm sorry, but this is exactly the image that it came to me when we describe this open fire and the way woman needs to collect the wood or other sources of very polluting fuels to make sure that they will spend hours cooking. And what's happened for health is that when you use this type of very polluting fuels, there is an incomplete combustion. And the result of all of those particles, these little things, will go through your respiratory system. Not only that, they will first irritate your eyes, but then you will inhale that. When you inhale that, you will have plenty of consequences. They were mentioned already, but let me take you through because we need to visualize what that means. It will represent one of the causes of pneumonia in children, and therefore cause of mortality is an important risk factor for mortality caused by pneumonia in very small children because they are at home with mom cooking or around the mom, and therefore they are inhaling something on an environment that it was supposed to be safe for them. It's the household environment, and it becomes very dangerous. So they inhale it. It will do a lot of damage to our respiratory system, clearly obstructive chronic pulmonary diseases. You will recognize asthma, of course, lung cancer, and everybody will think that it's very much related to respiratory diseases only, but it's not, because from the bloodstream, those horrible particles that are very damaging for our health, they can reach every organ in our body, every single organ. We have every day more evidence about the damage that those particles can cause to our health. They will be responsible for stroke. They will be responsible for a lot of cardiovascular diseases as well. Of course, ischemic heart disease, and now many neurodevelopmental problems that we are detecting affecting our brain as well. So the gain, if we allow people, if we do this transition to clean sources of energy at the household level, a clean cooking, the gain for health will be fundamental. Today we have 4.3 million people dying because of the indoor air pollution. This is totally unacceptable. So any collaboration, this report will really support the argument that we need to accelerate this transition. We need to make sure that these women or men that are affected now by this exposure at the safest place in the world, that it should be your environment, your home, is now free from that. When I wake up every morning and I prepare my coffee, it takes me 1 second to have electricity. I do click and I have electricity. That changed my life. For many women around the world, this click that it takes me 1 second, it will be hours of looking for the wood, not going to school, cooking and spending time in front of this very polluting combustion, and then affecting the health of all at home, including, of course, the children. So we need to accelerate this transition. It's fundamental for health, in addition to gender, of course, violence, of course, education. I mean, so many benefits that it will be difficult to still justify the fact that we are not putting the right investment in something that will generate so many benefits. My last point, very, very short, is that we are already paying the price of that. I mean, on all the economic analysis that we are doing about the investments and what will be the benefits, we are not incorporating the externalities. The externality means that the fact that we are using these polluting fuels at home at the moment is costing our hospitals, our health systems, trillions. So when people use the argument that this is very costly, this will require a huge investment, is because they don't know that we are already paying the price, and our health systems are already spending fortunes on treating chronic diseases that are caused by exposure to those polluting fuels. Of course, we are not calculating the price of any single death that is caused by this as well. That has no price. So we need to accelerate that, and the health community will be very, very happy to join forces with you on this report to make sure that we have ambition and speed to accelerate the transition to clean sources of energy for cooking at the household level. Thank you so much again for the invitation, and thank you, Dr. Birol and team, for this very strategic launch today. Over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nera, for those remarks. We now get to hear from the government of Senegal, and I would note a government that recently joined the IEA family as an association country. And from Senegal's Ministry of Petroleum and Energies, we're joined by Mr. Papa Samba Ba, the Director of Hydrocarbons. Papa Samba, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
We hear you very well, thank you. Please go ahead.
Excellent. So thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank IEA, Dr. Birol, Laura, and all the team for extending this invitation to the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy of Senegal. As said, new member of associated member of IEA. and glad to be here as one of the first activities that we are sharing with IEA in this frame. So it is, I think, a good opportunity, I think, to discuss about a very important challenge that Africa and the world in general are facing in terms of energy, because it used to be the subject that on which we are not shedding the light enough in order to get how to say the fair result that we need to provide to those people in this clean cooking energy issue. Here with this publication on which we are, how to say, congratulating IEA and the whole team for the great job that was done. In Senegal, just to give the example of Senegal, the clean cooking issue is, I'll say, a subject on which the government of Senegal is working since the 70s. With one of the first what we call buttonization program, the LPG actually development program that was launched in 1974 in order to help the household to use more LPG instead of the traditional biomass. But just to say that since all this year, we made some progress, but clearly we have still a lot to do in order to achieve this universal access to the clean cooking energy. And with that, we launch additional program in order to mix. I think the one of the slide of Laura show it to mix the technology. Actually, in addition to the LPG, we are pushing also to have some biogas production in mainly the rural areas in order to have some how to say local energy producing and building synergy with the other activities, with also some improved stores that we are developing and distributing all around the country in order to help all these this move. But this to say that really our conviction is that, and we are aligned with the report on that. There is no real technical barrier on that, no financial barrier at all. It is a matter of political will and commitment to do in order to achieve those results. And on top of that, there are some cultural barriers on which with the specialists we work on with the population in order to get them how to say committed and to this new technology, this new way of using or preparing the meal basically. So all the solutions are here. With this kind of initiative, has this report, we can really put more focus on this issue. And just to say that, to finish, that in the frame of the energy transition, we used to put as a priority, as we say, we as Senegal and Africa, we used to put as priority that yes, it is important to go and how to say do some progress in the CO2 emission, but let's not forget those priority and the clean cooking energy improvement is one of the priority, but most of them it is the development of this area, the economic development, because I think on the analysis of the IEA, if we see the curve of Asia and Africa that are not looking definitely the same. You should really find the same way in the term of how to say per capita GDP. If we look at it, you should have the same shape actually. So the mother of all these this battle is the economic development. So definitely we need to keep the economic development of all regions of the world as a priority when you talk about energy transition, when you talk about clean energy, and this I think will help to solve all these issues in terms of energy, in terms of water, etc. So thanking again IEA and congratulating Laura and all her team for the great job that have done, and wishing you the best. Over from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Papa Sambaba from the government of Senegal. And we now go to the government of Kenya, which also recently joined the IEA family as an association country. In this case, we have Mr. Isaac Kiva, the Secretary General for Renewables at the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum of Kenya. Mr. Kiva, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very, very good. We can hear you well. So please go ahead.
So good morning, good afternoon, all. We applaud IEA for publication of this vision for clean cooking, and we are excited to be part of it and also a part of the member of the IEA. Kenya is on course to be able to achieve access to clean cooking by 2028, and we are using all the clean technologies, the fuels and applications, including bioethanol, e-cooking, biogas, improved cooktops, and also LPG, which we are soon rolling out to especially all the public institutions, starting with the schools. The president has given that objective and that direction, that we indeed get the dirty fuels, what the WHO was talking about, out of our children in school, so they can be able to study in a clean environment. So we want to give them this transitional fuel as we also look forward to going fully clean. We work with all the stakeholders, including the governments, the development partners, and society and business community to be able to enhance our actions and provision to enable accelerated deployment. We are already formulating our clean cooking strategy, which we hope to be ready by October. And this is going to lead in the way of how to deploy, how to interact with all the members in the value chain, and how to facilitate accelerated uptake of clean cooking. We look forward to getting into some agreements during the Africa Climate Summit and during the COP28 on the world, looking at how we can be able to get flexible financing to be availed for the whole value chain, so that this tremendous opportunity we have to be able to bring on board the benefits, which are very immense, talking about social, economic, health, education of our rural girls, self-esteem of those girls in the rural areas. If we deploy clean energy technology, then we are going to be able to get these immense benefits. And we look forward to doing that in the side of the clean cooking. Kenya seeks then to scale up our efforts and to ensure that this attainment of clean cooking is achieved by 2028. The last presentation we received from Raura said that access to clean cooking is attainable. And that was a very good break point for me. That is going to really be a motivation for us, that it is attainable and we should be able to attain it. We look forward to collaboration with IEA and also the like-minded partners to be able to further this objective and be able to reach our clean energy aspirations. As the government of Kenya, we have already said we are going to reach clean energy by 2030, and this is both in the electricity subsector, in the clean cooking subsector, and also moving on to all forms of energy we are going to be deploying. So we want to thank you, and we look forward to partnering with all of us to be able to make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiva from the Kenyan Ministry of Energy and Petroleum for those remarks. And we now have time to take some questions from journalists. We invite the journalists in attendance to send your questions through the Q&A function of the Zoom if you haven't done so already. And please mention your media outlet along with your question. We'll just take a 2-minute break to give you a chance to enter your questions. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you very much to everyone who's submitted questions so far. We're going to start with one for the AFDB, the African Development Bank, for Dr. Kariuki, asking what are some examples of successful clean cooking related projects in Africa? And this is something perhaps that the AFDB has worked on quite a bit. Dr. Kariuki, what can you tell us?
Thank you very much for the question. It's as was indicated earlier, it's something that we are starting late in the day. However, we are very active and look forward to spending considerable time and effort to ensure that we realize clean cooking, universal access to clean cooking in the shortest time possible. So, for example, the first project that we've invested in is what we call, we've invested in Spark Plus Africa Fund. This is the first fund in Africa involved in clean cooking. The fund, which is developed by the Clean Cooking Alliance and Enabling Capital, invests in providers of clean cooking solutions, on the continent, as well as distributors and provides consumer finance. In this regard, I must say that we were the anchor investor, providing up to $10 million in the form of first loss of equity. And and since then, this particular fund has made investments in a company called Brunt Manufacturing in Kenya, which specializes in the design and manufacture of biomass, electric, and LPG cook stoves. The fund's investment will support Brunt Manufacturing to increase the capacity on its to an industrial scale in Nairobi and finance the expansion to new markets. For example, Somalia, I think Ghana, Nigeria, Mozambique, and DRC. So, but the other thing that we're actually doing is also to integrate clean cooking as part of ongoing electrification programs and projects. And one such example that I wish to cite is in Somalia, what we call the Somalia household access to renewable energy and advanced cooking technologies, where we aim to provide and distribute about 25,000 improved cook stoves in rural areas. And I've just seen Engineer Kiva. Here again in Kenya, we've actually proposed that as part of the Kenya Electric Cooking Market Development Program, we will disseminate electric pressure cookers and induction stoves in peri-urban and urban areas in the country, in the wider context of the third phase of what we are doing, calling the third phase of the Kenya Power and Lighting last mile connectivity project. Let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kariuki. So we have a couple more questions. One is on affordability, I guess. given that many of these households without clean cooking access live in extreme poverty, will they be able to afford clean cooking solutions? And then a question on the challenges of progress so far. Why haven't we seen more progress, and what will it take to accelerate progress where it has been lagging? So I think Laura Kotze will take one of those, and then Dan Wetzel, the lead author, will take another one.
So thank you very much, Jethro. I will maybe touch upon affordability and rebound on something that Dr. Papasambhaba mentioned, and even Engineer Kiva mentioned as well. After all, this is about development. It is a development issue. And in our analysis, we actually assessed how many of the households today could actually afford the clean cooking solution. And the numbers are a bit sobering, because we actually see that basically at least half of the households that don't have clean cooking solutions today wouldn't be able to afford them with their income. In some cases, the upfront investment to buy the new stove is several months of their income. So they would need to spend 4, 5, 6 months of their income to afford the clean cooking. So for us, this is front and center in part of the solutions. The solution is that a large part of this 8 billion we mentioned in several instances today will need to come from concessional finance, simply subsidies that need to help those families to overcome the very high upfront cost. So the numbers are clear. In many cases, those are not affordable. Concessional funding will be essential to solve the problem.
Perfect. And taking it from there, looking at the successful stories, particularly the ones in developing Asia and China, India and Indonesia, as Lara said before, leadership at the top, the highest levels, saying this is a priority is the first step. But second to that, public funding, and having that public funding available and targeting households that would not be of interest to commercial players otherwise is really key to be able to extend this access. So, and these are large markets that we're able to cultivate a strong commercial set of commercial players to be able to move this quickly. So trying to replicate this in other countries, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, becomes a little bit more challenging as they're smaller countries, and the debt crisis right now is really hitting many of these countries quite hard. And so this is where we see a key role for development finance, and carbon financing in particular as an emerging solution to be able to move this. And this is really to make sure that these are providing enough of the incentives and the right strategic incentives to attract these players to households that they would not go to otherwise, and the commercial case is not necessarily there today. And this can take many forms. There's a lot of really promising emerging financing solutions, and in particular I draw attention to carbon offsets and carbon credits, where a lot of them today are going to clean cooking projects in Africa for the ones that are flowing there. And every dollar that these bring to these projects can help tip them from not being profitable over to profitability. And this targeting and this being able to bring more and more into profitability is essential for making further progress here.
Thank you very much, Daniel and Laura, for those responses. And we now have a question about energy access more broadly. We hear some oil producers saying that the urgent need to expand access to electricity takes priority over tackling climate change. Do you agree with this? I think this is a question that maybe Dr. Birol might wish to take. Over to you, Dr. Birol.
Thank you very much, Jethro, and I think it is an important issue. But before that, may I also take this opportunity to thank once again the African Development Bank, to President Adesina and also the Group Vice President today for the cooperation. At the same time, getting the good news today that the more attention and more resources will be devoted to the clean cooking by the African Development Bank. Many thanks to WHO for the long-standing cooperation on this important matter, and also the new members of the IEF family, Kenya and Senegal governments, for their support. And also very good news I just get from my communication colleagues that this webinar is followed by people close to 30,000, especially in Africa and beyond. And so I am happy to register this interest from the countries around the world. Now, coming back to question, yes, it is true that the many established oil producers and oil companies say that today, as there are, for example, 800 million people who not have access to electricity, this should be our priority, not the other issues such as the climate change. Now, first of all, I appreciate very much that the recent growing attention of the oil and gas community and the energy access issue. This is very good news. And having said that, I have two points to register here. One, in terms of large-scale fossil fuel investments, for example, in terms of oil investments, there is no one-to-one direct relationship between the more oil and the more access to electricity. All the numbers show that the contribution of oil to growing electricity generation globally, building new oil-fired power plants for the electricity access, is close to zero. So I wanted to register this. And the second, as I mentioned during my intervention, again, I register with great happiness that the oil companies, gas companies globally, international and national oil and gas companies are turning their attention to energy access. And I think there is an excellent opportunity now that the last year, 2022, was in the history one of the highest revenues that the global oil and gas industry registered, about $4 trillion US. And this issue that we just raised, finding a solution to the clean cooking, would require only 0.2% of this 4 trillion. I think there is a great opportunity for the oil and gas community to follow their statements they make at different occasions, that they see energy access as a key priority by allocating 0.2% of their revenues to this very important cause. And I am really sure that they will be on the right side of the history. Once again, I want to thank the African Development Bank, World Health Organization, Kenyan and Senegalese governments who are the new members of the IEA family, and all those who supported this report, but especially my colleagues Laura Cozy, Dan Wetzel and their team for completing this report. And back to you, Jethro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. We've already run quite a lot over time, but thank you for joining this launch event on what is a really important topic that profoundly affects the lives of billions of people around the world, as we've heard from our participants today. If any journalists have questions that didn't get answered during the Q&A that you'd like to follow up on, we invite you to reach out to our press office and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. A final thank you to Dr. Birol, to Ms. Kotze, to Mr. Wetzel, and of course to Dr. Kariuki, Dr. Nera, Mr. Barr, and Mr. Kiva. Thank you for your contributions, and thank you to the journalists for the questions. Thank you for everyone for joining us online. And a reminder that the full report of A Vision for Clean Cooking Access for All is available for free on our website. So do please go and take a look. And that's all for now. Thank you and goodbye.